Hi, boys and girls. Today I'm going to be reading chapter 14 of Time for Andrew. So here we go. Chapter 14. Hannah jumped out of the tree ahead of me and ran across the lawn toward the pump. By the time I caught up with her, she'd already filled the ladle. Tipping her head back, she let the water splash like liquid silver on her face. Before I knew what she was up to, she poured a ladleful on my head. There, she said. Doesn't that feel good? Watch out, Andrew, another voice said. Someone as sweet as you might melt like sugar. Theo stood a few feet away, scowling at me. Hannah laughed and slung a ladle full of water in his direction. Let's see what you're made of. In seconds, the three of us were fighting for the ladle, slopping water everywhere, turning the ground to mud under our feet, slipping, sliding, falling, laughing. In the midst of it, Mama strode across the lawn. Hannah, for heaven's sake! You haven't got the sense you were born with. Snatching the ladle, Mama whacked Hannah on the fanny with it. Next, she hit Theo and me. Him on the head, me on the shoulder. It stung for a second. But I was more surprised than hurt. Inside. Mama gave Hannah a push. Clean up. You know I'm hosting the women's club in less than an hour. And I need you to serve the refreshments. Hannah groaned and rolled her eyes. Oh, Mama, not those old hens. When Mama raised the ladle threateningly, Hannah laughed and ran for the house, clucking at every step. As for you two, Mama said, looking hard at Theo and me, I'd appreciate it if you'd both disappear for a couple of hours. Mrs. Armiger will be among my guests, and I'm not certain I can trust the pair of you. Before she turned away, she added, Take Buster with you. I don't want him making a nuisance of himself. With Buster leading the way, Theo and I took a path downhill into the woods. A crow called, another answered. Like sentinels, they passed the word along. 2 boys and a dog were coming. About yesterday, I said slowly. I'm sorry about Mrs. Armiger and all. Theo sighed and kicked a stone. Oh, Mama was going to sign me up for music lessons anyway. He watched Buster bring the stone back and lay it at his feet. I just wish you'd show some spunk, Andrew, like you used to. It's no fun getting in trouble all by myself. I could have gotten a real walloping from Papa if Mama had told on me. I scuffed along, watching grasshoppers jump out of my way. The weeds were alive with them. It was that drat diphtheria, Theo muttered. I guess you can't help it. We walked till we came to a road. Where do you want to go now? Theo asked. I wasn't sure where we would go, so I just shrugged. You pick. How about Trot and Owens? Theo asked. I have 5 cents. We can share a bottle of soda. Trot and Owens turned out to be a little white grocery store with a gas pump in front. Leaving Buster under a tree, I followed Theo up the sagging steps. Inside it was dark and cool. A big fan hung from the ceiling and stirred the air around and round. Dangling strips of sticky flypaper turned slowly. On the shelves was just about everything a person could need. Clothes, shoes, food, tools, even some odds and ends of furniture in the back. It was the first time I'd been in a grocery store, and I couldn't get over the prices. 100 pounds of sugar for $5? 100 pounds of salt for 20 cents? Look at this, Theo, I said. 12 cents for a dozen eggs. That's just a penny apiece. Theo stared at me. Why, you can get them a lot cheaper at Wilson's farm. Who cares anyway? Surely you don't want to spend my money on eggs. But I'd already moved on to something better. Bins of cookies, raisin, oatmeal, ginger snaps, all unbelievably cheap. Jars of candy, too. Licorice by the yard. I wish I had some money, I said. My mouth was watering so hard, my jaws ached. All we have is this. Theo showed me the 5 pennies. But another hand, bigger than this, swept across his palm and took the coins with it. Taken by surprise, we stared at Edward. Neither Theo nor I had seen him enter the store, but there he was, laughing at us. When Theo lunged for his money, Edward dodged and dropped the pennies into his own pocket. That's mine, Theo yelled. Give it back. Edward spread his hands. Take it if you dare. Theo turned to me, but I pretended not to notice. Leaning over a metal cooler the size of a bathtub, I stared at the bottles of soda bobbing among the chunks of melting ice. Maybe if I ignored him, Edward would get bored and go away? Theo heaved a sigh of exasperation and flew at his cousin, fists flying. Sorry, I lost my space. Edward gave him a shove that sent his reeling backward into a pyramid of canned food. The crash got the clerk's attention. That's enough of that, you young ruffians, he bellowed. I'll not have rowdy behavior in my store. No excuses, out you go. In seconds, the three of us were in the street. Oops, sorry. Theo tackled Edward again. This time, he landed in the dust at my feet. Do something, Andrew, he shouted. Buster barked, but he wasn't sure whom to attack, Edward or me. I looked at the dog. I looked at Edward. I looked at Theo. I even looked at the store, hoping Mr. Trot or Mr. Owens might run down the steps and rescue me. Suddenly, Edward reached out and grabbed the front of my shirt. He pulled me so close I could count the beads of sweat on his upper lip. Yes, he sneered. Do something. I dare you. Let me go. Instead, Edward twisted my shirt, squeezing my neck till I could hardly breathe. You've lost your nerve, haven't you? He lifted me an inch off the ground and shook me like a puppy. How come you haven't been near the trestle all summer? When I made a choking noise, Edward loosened his grip on my shirt. But he didn't let me go. All that bragging and boasting before you got sick, I knew you'd never do it. You're a lying little coward. I glanced at Theo, hoping he might give me a clue, but he was glaring at Edward. His face was red, and the jugular vein in his neck throbbed with anger. Andrew's not scared of nothing, he yelled. Now that he's well. Oh, let me try that again. Now that he's well, he'll do it. You just name the date. Edward released me so suddenly I landed on my rear end in the road. A week from today, he said. 12 noon. From where I sat, he looked enormous. Tall and skinny, long-armed, big-handed, he stood against the sky, blocking the sun, scowling down at me like the worst outlaw in any Western, old or new. You better be there, Andrew, he said. He will, Theo yelled, and I'll be with him. So will Buster. The dog barked and tried to escape the grip that Theo had on his collar. Sorry, guys, my voice is not working today. Edward spat in the dust. Slowly and deliberately, one by one, he dropped Theo's pennies beside me. I'll believe it when I see it, he sneered. Like a fool, I sat in the middle of the road and watched Edward saunter away. When I was sure he wasn't coming back, I got to my feet. Theo saw me gather up the pennies, but when I tried to give it to him, he hit my hand. I looked at the copper coins shining in the white dust. Don't you want a soda? Not with that money. Before I could stop him, Theo picked up the pennies and flung them into the jungle of pokeberries and weeds beside the road. Buster woofed and dove into the brush after them. In the silence, we heard him thrashing around, looking for the coins. You're not my big brother anymore. You're a little crybaby, Theo yelled. Next, you'll be wearing white gloves and slicking your hair back and playing the piano at recitals like a perfect sickening old gentleman. With that, Theo turned and ran. Buster bounded out of the weeds, barked in my direction, and raced after Theo. I trudged home by myself, worrying about the trestle. What was I supposed to do there? If Andrew had dreamed it up, it was sure to be terrible. Maybe I'd have to lie down between the rails and let the train run over me. Boys did that in stories, but I wasn't sure it worked in real life. It seemed to me you'd be gouged to death by things hanging from the bottoms of the boxcars. I thought a little longer. Maybe it had something to do with explosives. Andrew had blown up an outhouse once. He might want to dynamite a whole train. I kicked Stone so hard I almost broke my toe. There was no way of guessing what went on in Andrew's fiendish mind. I'd have to just wait till tonight and ask him. All right, so what do you think he's going to have to do? Will he actually go through with it? Will he actually stand up to this bully of a cousin, Edward? Let's find out next time. Have a great day, boys and girls.